Hey everybody! Today I'm talking about something that's just top of mind because I'm living it, sort of. Is organizational change. Lots of stuff happens. Reorgs happen all the time, big and small. I know there's a bunch of people that are good friends of mine or past colleagues that laid off recently, either at Google or at Microsoft. It's been in the news. It's big stuff. But also inside the organization, things are changing. Things are always changing, and so I have the unique perspective in that I went through this type of thing in sort of a state agency. I used to work at a university, so I understand state agency. I was a consultant for a decade and saw this sort of stuff like nearby, or even like designed it, so to speak, the organizational change. As a consultant for a long time. So I've seen this thing happen inside organizations at least 15 times in my career. Like, whether it directly affected me or I was right next to it because the people around me were affected, or possibly I was designing the change that caused it to happen. Like, I've been around this a lot. And so I thought, especially if you're in the midst of this, maybe you're not somebody that's laid off, but now you found yourself in a new job. Like, the work you're doing is not the work you were doing yesterday, and you didn't necessarily sign up for this. I think that's one of the things that's not talked about a lot, is that how often in a reorg, your actual job changes, but the job it changed to is not the job you actually got hired for. And so I'll give you an example just in that kind of org change. Like, a few years back, while my dad was passing away, there was big layoffs, and I got reorged into a new organization, and I got a new title and a new job that was not the job I signed up for. And so the best part about this was the job I got moved into, that role I got moved into, was a role that in the interview process to get the job I had that went away, to get the job, they said, no, you're not one of these people. Like, I was specifically told by hiring people, you shouldn't be applying for this job. You should be applying for the other job, the job I actually got. And now that job went away, and they put me in a job I wasn't really suited for. Right. So I've been in like, whoa, wait a second. This isn't what I signed up for. What do I do? And so I think the most important thing in the midst of organizational change, right? So as long as you still have, food, shelter, that kind of stuff, like there's other, this isn't really necessarily a discussion around what happens when you get laid off, because that's a whole different scenario, like getting fired or laid off, or that there's lots of other considerations. But when you're still in the org, but things are very different than what you expected, and you literally possibly have a job you did not apply for, and that you're actually not suited for, like this happens. I think the very first thing I've seen that people that navigate this successfully, so this isn't just my experience of navigating things and staying employed, but also seeing other people, the first thing is don't panic. Right? Like, you got reorged, but after the reorg, the company itself is most likely going to keep things going for a while before they do it again. Right? So the only time I've ever seen cascading layoffs, like layoff this month and then more that next and more next and more next, is when the company itself is like going insolvent. The company has some real financial, like, sort of systemic financial issues. If that's going on, then that's a whole nother deal. But, in the normal kind of reorg layoff situation that I've seen across these companies, it's number of headcount leave, jobs get reoriented, you suddenly get a bunch of new work that you never saw before, and possibly are put in a job you don't mean. But step one is don't panic, right? And the reason I say that was, if, on Monday, your bills were being paid, mostly you could, manage your day-to-day life. You had, food, shelter, transportation. If you had all of that worked out, that was going on. And now this all got rearranged and you're in a new spot. Step one, don't panic. Right? Just don't panic. Like, the worst thing you can do is like get emotionally wound up and freaked out right this minute about something that really, whatever the solution is, right? You got put in a job that's not yours, whatever, you can't do anything about it right this minute, right? So don't panic. and take some very, take very calm and measured steps. So if you're just right this minute experience a reorg, experience a new job, experience something you didn't set up for, step one, take a deep cleansing breath, you know, get your head straight so that you're not panicking, because any actions you take at the very beginning of this under the stress of everything changed and I don't know what to do are going to probably be bad steps. Like your adrenaline's up, your neurochemicals are off, and if you panic, if you start just doing a bunch of stuff to try to fix it or try to change it, it's unlikely to be optimal. It's just not. It's not a good deal. So number one, take a deep breath and assess: do I have food, shelter, transportation? Yes, I have those things. Okay, I will live till tomorrow, and I just need to assess what do I need to do today to get through today's work, and that's enough trouble for me. And so if you can do that, if you can avoid the panic and you can center yourself and get calm, and I mean, in my case, I'd pray about it, right? Like at the beginning of this, you just got to pray about it, and you got to say, hey, I need some help here, and I don't want to panic. So once you've gone beyond that stage and you're not panicking anymore and you've settled down, you're like, okay, things have changed, but I'm calm. Then the very first thing I see people do is reestablishing their network. And what I mean by that isn't necessarily what you think, in that I'm not saying reach out to LinkedIn and connect to everybody possible so you can go find a new job. Like that might be part of reestablishing your network depending on where things go. But the reality of the situation is reestablish your network is everybody else is going through this too in your org. Like, or if they're not going through it, everybody they're interacting with. So I've been in a reorg situation where my specific organization kind of got blown up or changed or whatever. But the people I worked with most often outside my org were fine. Like nothing had changed there. They were normal. But like spending an hour with them to say, okay, my priorities have changed. I'm not quite sure what's going on. What can I do to help you in the short term that I think still applies? Like just having those conversations helps you reestablish in your own head that I'm okay and I'm going to be okay. There are people here that I work with that like me. I like them. We get things done together. We'll probably still be able to get things done together. Cool. Right. And so by establishing your network and working together, that really helps. But it also then helps with the next stage in this of sweating the small stuff. And I had always been told, don't sweat the small stuff. And then I read this book called Extreme Leadership by Jocko Willink. And it's amazing. Of all the business books I've read in my entire career, it's one of my favorites. I think, and it's my favorite because they do such a good job in the book of making an assertion, sweat the small stuff, then giving examples of why, the Navy SEALs do this, why the Navy SEALs sweat the small stuff, but then how it affects normal corporations. I think there's a bunch of business books out there that might give you some neat anecdote, but don't actually boil it down to, we took this principle to a company, they used the principle, and this is their outcome. Like, I don't see a lot of writing like that, and I really appreciate that about Extreme Leadership, is everything in there. And so when they talk about sweat the small stuff, they're talking about that in combat, the small stuff will kill you, right? Like just having, some reflective piece of tape on your backpack could get you seen by the enemy and shot, right? Like sweating the small stuff is super important in combat because the small stuff will kill you. But also in business, sweating the small stuff allows you to basically do a much better job of assessing sort of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in this new environment. By having kind of a, with my network, I end up having, I've done this in reorgs, but I've also seen other people do this. Like when I was a consultant and reorgs happened, people would sit down and they would do this with me. Like they would tell me, like we'd be having lunch or we'd be having coffee and they would just start sweating small stuff all over me of what just happened in the reorg and trying to figure it out. And the whole point about this is it helps you get really pointy on what is actually important that I'm getting measured on, in this new world, in this new role that I have, in this new space that I'm in. What am I actually getting measured on that matters to my leadership? And what am I actually getting measured on that matters to me? And so what I mean by that is there's a lot of parts of our jobs that we like because we just like doing it, right? There's some pieces of my job that are just interesting and fun to do. There are other pieces of my job that aren't. And so by sweating the small stuff, what it lets me do is get really pointy on, okay, these 5 things in the new role, I really hate. But it happens to be that 2 of those 5 things are the most important thing to my boss. Like in the new world order, 2 of the 5 things I hate the most about the job are my boss's most important things. And it's possible that, the number one thing that gets you excited and makes you go to work in the morning might not be on the list anymore, right? And so that's probably not a small thing anymore. That's gone from small stuff to a big stuff. But until you've done the assessment, until you sat there and really dug through what all is bugging you about this, do you get to where you want to go? And so I'll give you an example. When I got put into this role that wasn't appropriate for me, like a role that literally when I tried to apply for it, somebody said, this isn't you, this doesn't fit, right? Part of what I had to do was sweat that small stuff of, okay, so I got put in the role that doesn't fit me. Can I actually be good at this role, right? And what it boiled down to in that role was I was going to have to be spending, a significant amount of my time like digging into some deep technical stuff that I don't want to say I'd outgrown. That's not the right word. That my interest had shifted from. I just wasn't interested in that stuff anymore because I had been doing that stuff for a decade, right? So it's the kind of thing of once you dig into it and you look at it, and the small stuff is the things you do every day at work. And, these 3 things I just don't care to do. I've been doing it for a decade. I'm tired of it. I'm bored with it. I just don't want to do it. That then comes down to the last question of answer the question for this to be successful, what has to be true? So once you sweated the small stuff and you look at it, like to be successful, it's like for me to keep this job, I've been dropped in a new job, or the objectives of the new division or the new product or the new project, whatever the new is it going to be successful? What has to be true? And so when I looked at that particular role I was talking about, what had to be true was I had to be willing to spend probably 10 to 20 hours a week deep in this area that I was just bored with. And I didn't think it was be true that I could get excited about it. And so I had to go get another job, right? And then I did. I mean, and that took that actually went pretty quick because the people that knew I wasn't really that person were like trying to help me out here. Like, yeah, this was a bad fit. We should have done something different. And they didn't. So they fixed it. But that might not be your case, right? And so that goes back to the network of once you know what has to be true in the role, and yeah, of the new things, right? I've sweated all the small stuff. I know that in the new role, here are the 5 pointy things I really don't like about this. This wasn't what I signed up for. I'm not excited about. But there's these 7 other things that I really probably enjoy and might actually be better. So I think it can be true that I can overcome the 5 because the 7 are great. Or vice versa, or I can't overcome it and I need to do something else. It gives you the clarity you need to move forward. And once you do know what's successful, then you can go back and you can kind of look at your manager in the new environment and you can say, okay, based on how all this stuff has changed and all of this, it looks like these are your priorities. And yeah, I can do this and this really well. And so how can we tune my role to be really focused on those things I can do really well? And can you help me navigate these other couple of things that I'm not so great on, either through training or coaching or possibly making adjustments in the role to make that, go away possibly. Like that's entirely possible. But you can't get there from here unless you've done the work of sweating the small stuff and really understanding what it is about the change that's got you down, got you beat, got you upset. And also, like I said, in this, in reestablishing your network, it gives you the ability to talk all that through, right? Because there are other people in the group, and I've had this happen where things have changed, and by talking to the people in my network, what I've been able to do is go, okay, so these three things are the problem in me trying to move forward. And talking to people in the network, and it's like, oh, hey, I don't really like this part of my thing. How about we trade a little bit? And so while it's maybe not specifically in the job description, you're able to make sure your objectives get covered because other people are willing to pick up a thing here or there, but you pick up another thing for them and everybody's happy. Right. And I think that's the last bit. Maybe I need to do another talk, a completely different talk is, making your job your own, because at the end of the day, I think that's really what makes work useful, is that you've gone through and you've figured out what it takes for you to be successful in the role, right? And you've been able to negotiate between your boss and your peers and possibly people throughout the organization something that works for everyone, right? And I think that's the really key part is, in reorgs, is asking the question, how can you help maybe pick up some small stuff or help some others who are struggling also with the change, such that you're all feel better and you're going to move forward even more. So anyway, I hope this is really helpful. And, if you're caught up in organizational change right now, I just hope you remember, don't panic, right? Like, think about the basics. If you've still got food, transportation, roof over your head, you're good. So you don't need to panic. Take some time to reconnect to other people in the org that are still there and that you might be still collaborating with. Work through the small stuff with them. Make sure that, see what small stuff you can pick up for them. They can pick up for you. You can work through it. And then finally, I'll say, takes time to really answer the question, if I'm going to be successful in this role, what has to be true? And if you can answer that positively, keep with it. If not, then maybe you need to exercise your external network and see about other opportunities. Anyway, just hope this helps. I know that it can be really challenging. And like I said, I've been through this a lot. So catch you all next time.